Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our webinars. This session for In the Know, we're going to talk about hand tailoring versus machine sewing, different types of canvases, so full canvas, half canvas, fused garment, what the differences are between all of those types of garments. So this is going to be quite interactive. So there is a chat box. If anyone has questions, feel free to just ask them and interject within the presentation. I'll try to address as many questions as possible. We'll also have some polls. And if there's a topic that we're not touching upon today that you are interested in, please do that in the chat, ask that, and we'll make sure to touch upon it in this session or in future sessions. Okay, so while we get started, I'm going to start a poll here. So again, in that chat box, you also see polls. So our first topic, we're going to get into a fused garment versus a half canvas versus a full canvas garment, and what that means, the different advantages and disadvantages of all of them. But our first question here on the poll is going to be, which garment has the longest life? Or I guess which garment, if you purchase it, are you going to get the most years and years out of it? So we have quite a few people answering here, and it looks like we have a mix of answers, but the majority are selecting full canvas. And full canvas is the correct answer. We're going to go into why that's the case in a few minutes here. And we'll get started. So we have a presentation here. Everyone should be able to see here, hand versus machine tailoring review. All right, so we talked about there's 3 different types of making a jacket. You can have a fused garment, a half canvas, or a full canvas garment. The first one that is a fused garment, you can see over here. A fusible, it's like you might hear someone say glue. So it's essentially, there's no piece, it's a fusible or like a glue that would go throughout the front of the jacket. It's a very cost-effective way to make a jacket. That's the biggest benefit. So it's going to be for an opening price point jacket. It's a cheaper way to make it. However, there are disadvantages that come with it. One other advantage outside of it being cost effective, because it's just like a piece of fusible, you don't have horsehair or felt canvas in there really. It's a lighter weight jacket. So that's another advantage for something that's fused. It's lighter weight, cost effective. However, there are some disadvantages here. So one benefit when you have a chest piece in there, which a half canvas or a full canvas would have, is it gives structure to the front of the jacket. You don't get that structure when you have a fused jacket. It's also less breathable because you do have glue in there. So it's more insular on that. It's a barrier, not as breathable. It can get hotter even though it is typically weighs less. You also don't get that traditional lapel roll that we'll see on a full canvas jacket with a fusible, just because you can't create the tension that you would be able to create in the sewing prospect. But the biggest disadvantage is that it's going to degrade over time. So this is actually the shortest lifespan on a fused garment. You might eventually see bubbling or puckering on the front of the jacket, or the jacket fronts and insides are going to actually separate. So you could, over time, you're going to get less, it's just not going to last you as long. But again, cost effective. Our next type of garment is a half canvas. So a half canvas is like a happy medium between a fused garment and a full canvas garment. So you do get some canvas on there, typically throughout the 2/3 of the front of the jacket. So even though we call it a half canvas, it's really like a 2/3 canvas. So that's going to give you some structure. you're going to be able to get some of that really great lapel roll. It's not going to be as flat because you have the canvas on the top. It's going to prevent some of that bubbling, and it's going to provide some structure. Again, because you have that canvas, you'll also have some extended life to the garment. It's not going to degrade as fast as a fused garment. Okay. Again, another benefit here, it's going to be less expensive than the full canvas, but it's also less handwork on there. So again, it's a happy medium between a fused and a full canvas garment. Now, a full canvas, it's kind of the old world tailoring. So this is when you talk about a bespoke jacket, you're always going to have either full canvas or just deconstructed. But bespoke old world tailoring, you'll have a full canvas. What is great on these jackets, they're breathable because they don't really have that fusible on there. It's a canvas, which is natural. You have cotton, sometimes horsehair, 3 layers. So it's a more breathable garment. You and your customer can dictate how heavy they want it. So typical canvases are 3 layers, but if you wanted a 2-layer or a softer canvas, you can adjust the weight and the softness of the garment. Also, because canvas, it's a piece of material, so I have one right over here. You can see that it's actually a layer. It's separate. You need to sew the shelf fabric to that. So what's great on that is it's more flexible. So when you are moving your arms, it's going to move with you. It's going to be more flexible, and the longer you wear this type of a garment, it's going to start molding to your body. So I like to talk about it as a shoe. So when you first buy a shoe, it's comfortable, but it hasn't quite fit to your foot. And then the more you wear it, you start to break it in. That's the same with a fully canvas garment. The longer you wear it, the more you wear it, it actually gets more comfortable, forms to your body better, and it's just going to have an extended life. With that as well, you're going to have the great quality lapel roll. It's not going to lay flat. It's going to have some life to the jacket. Then what else is great with full canvas and to an extent half canvas, because you have some structure in there, it's going to just the fronts of the garments will be really clean because you have just more structure and you can give more life to it, especially with how we tailor the canvas to the fronts of the jacket. So any questions on fused, half, or full canvas garments so far? And with this, the full canvas definitely takes the most time because you have that whole chest piece in canvas from the top of the jacket all the way down to the bottom. So that takes longer to actually tailor and sew into the garment. The half canvas is going to take a little less time, and then the fused is the quickest option. Okay. All right. So really brief high-level overview of the 3 options. Now let's actually get into sewing. So benefits of hand sewing, benefits of machine sewing, because they both have their advantages and disadvantages. Okay, so with hand tailoring, high level overview here, we have one thing that's great when you're hand sewing, you have a needle and thread and your hand. So you only have that one thread versus a machine sewing where you also have the bobbin, but you have more control when you're hand sewing. So on more quality garments, you're gonna see the hand sewing actually on the interior of the garment. So you wanna look at the interior of the garment to have that quality. Sometimes you might have flashy like Milanese buttonholes or exterior finishings with hand, but for a quality garment, you want to look inside. Kind of if you're into cars, you want to look under the hood at the engine to really test the quality. So one thing that you're gonna want to look at, the lining, the armhole, and then at the bottom of the sleeve, if those are done by hand. So with the armhole, bottom of the sleeve, and lining, to tell if it's a hand sewing versus machine sewing, you'll have slightly irregular stitches. So it's not going to be completely consistent, the same, distance between each stitch, and it's going to be looser. And why that's important is because that's going to be a more flexible lining that's going to move with you. So if you think about that, you're going to have a little bit more give versus something that has a lot of tension and that's stiff. So it's just going to be comfortable. And with that give, that also can increase the longevity because it's moving with you. There's no pressure points or resistance, so it's less prone to tearing. That's the most important part when it comes to hand tailoring. So it's flexible, moves with you, and there are less pressure points. A few other items over here. You have pattern matching. So typically on handmade garments or with handwork, and it's a high quality, you want to make sure there's pattern matching. And what do we mean by that? So that'll be with a plaid fabric or a striped fabric, window panes on the plaid that we have here, that the lines, horizontal and vertical, are going to match up. Typically, you're going to see them on the pocket you want to look for. That's a high quality garment. And then at the shoulder line that they're going to match up. So here you can see when we have the pocket over here, it's going to just look like a straight line, both vertical and horizontal. It's not skewed. And then on the jacket shoulder, you can see too the horizontal lines, they look like it's one line, there's no breaking. This is typically on more handmade garments, or at least higher quality garments. You're definitely going to want to take a look at this. If you're ever shopping or looking at makers, look at, for that brand, a plaid garment, and if it's not matching, that's generally a lower quality garment. And that takes not only more time when it comes to the design and cutting portion, but actually on the construction and tailoring, that's more time consuming to make sure that everything is aligned. Then here's some examples of where you're going to want to look for some of the handwork. So you have the armhole at the bottom right. That's something I would implore you to check on your garments because, in my opinion, the armhole is where your customer is going to feel it most. You want to maybe check the bottoms of the coats, where the lining's attached to the shell, and then at the edge of the sleeves, because you'll be able to tell if that's done by hand as well. But this is where your customer is going to feel it when they put on a jacket that you're making, that's a handmade jacket versus something off the rack. They're going to feel a difference. That's what makes these garments special. Another topic here for more of a handmade garment versus a machine-made garment. When you have, whether it's hand cutting or hand shaping, typically on the lapel, so when we say lapel over here, this is the lapel, and then you have your collar. At the edges, they're not going to be like 90-degree angles. They're going to be slightly rounded. Why that's important is because that's going to, again, that's going to keep longevity on your garments. So that's like a keyword when we're talking about handmade garments. It's longevity. You're giving your client more value. It's comfortable. It's a breathable garment with that full canvas, more flexible as everything's moving with you, and you have more give on a handmade seam through like the armhole or lining. And then when we do certain tailoring techniques like slightly rounded corners on the lapel, it's going to help preserve that garment and prevent degradation, versus if something was angled, you might be more prone to fraying, or just it's gonna maybe lose its shape. So typically you'll see that on lapels. Sometimes you see that on the bottoms of the sleeves, but typically for handmade garments, you want to at least check the lapels that it's not 90-degree angle. Machine tailoring. Again, there are benefits with machine tailoring. We talk about on hand tailoring, it's a single needle and thread, and that gives flexibility. With machine tailoring, you have the bobbin thread as well, so it's a stronger stitch. Typically on handmade garments, not everything is done by hand, so straight seams, you'll have some machine tailoring in there. That again gives it extra strength. Another thing that we talked about with checking if something is done by hand or machine is hand stitch sometimes is slightly irregular. With machine tailoring, it's super consistent. So you know that you set the tension on the machine, so you're going to have consistent stitching throughout. Also, when you have buttonholes, so oftentimes clients might actually prefer machine buttonholes to hand buttonholes because they look consistent and they're very clean. Whereas a handmade buttonhole, it might be slightly off skewed, or it's not as clean. So you do have benefits when it comes to machine versus hand. And machine made garments, again, even if you're getting a fully bench made garment on Savile Row, there's going to be sewing machines that are used on that garment. It wouldn't make sense to have something that's completely done by hand, because you want that machine stitch for strength on the side seams, and you might want a cleaner look when it comes to front buttonholes, sleeve buttonholes, or lapel buttonholes. Going to some of the questions over here. Will machine stitching provide pattern matching? So great question. Machine stitching, that's more on the construction side. Some machine-made garments, they will have pattern matching. Just generally more high-quality garments or handmade garments, you know that if it has pattern matching, it's a handmade garment, because they're taking the extra time to do that. So I guess it's more of a, if we don't have pattern matching, it's not a handmade garment. If it does have pattern matching, some machine garments will have that, but it's more of this is not a quality garment if we don't have this type of matching. Great question, John. Any other questions on just general machine techniques or hand techniques when it comes to tailoring? Okay. Then we have another question over here. So Deb asks, when you say that a canvas can extend the life of a garment, can you give us an average? So great question. It's slightly subjective. It depends, how often you're wearing the garment. If you're dry cleaning the garment, which we like to say dry clean as little as possible, regardless of what type of canvas that you have. But typically more handmade, high quality full canvas garments, they're generational garments. So if you take good care of them, you could pass them on to future generations. A more fusible machine made garment, just because of the glue that's in there, that fusible material, 5 years or less. And especially if you have 2 suits and you're wearing them to the office twice a week, you're going to get even less life out of that, especially if you are taking it to get dry cleaned or you're steaming it. Then you could have puckering, bubbling, and it's just not going to look great. So anywhere from generational garment on the full canvas, and to an extent half canvas, although you will eventually run into those issues with bubbling and puckering because of the fusible at the bottom of the half canvas to, maybe 2 to 5 years on a fusible suit. But again, if you maintain it, you can extend the life on all of these garments. And if you're only have one suit and you're wearing it and steaming it, maybe taking it to the dry cleaners, which we don't recommend, you're going to decrease the longevity of that garment. Okay, great question over here. So there is a huge move for sustainability and vegan. So we have a question, can a canvas garment be vegan if it has no horsehair, or if someone wanted a vegan garment, would you use fusing? So what you could recommend with, talk to your maker about what goes into their canvas. Typically with horsehair, that adds some springiness and stiffness to the canvas. It's really only on full canvas, but you can remove the horsehair piece. So depending on if it's what type of cotton or what other products are going into your maker's canvas, you could potentially have a vegan canvas. What you would want to do if you don't have that is I would recommend just a completely deconstructed jacket. So that's going to be a jacket without the fusible, without the canvas on there. It's very lightweight. You might have just a slight chest piece on there to help structure it. And then, of course, you have certain fabric options, cottons, bamboos that you could make out of there to sell a more vegan type garment. Okay, so we'll keep Q&A open for the next few minutes. Another great question over here. Aren't there certain machines that can be substituted for hand processes, like pick stitching on the outside edges, AMF machine, that duplicate uneven aspects of hand sewing? Really great question. There are, so especially the German maker, or the German engineers, they've come up with a lot of machines to help mimic handmade sewing process. So the AMF machine is a great machine. You can do that for pick stitching. It does mimic beautiful pick stitch. However, if you flip the side, if you flip over, it's not going to mimic exactly on the I guess backside of your lapel. So if you really wanted to tell the difference, you could if you flip over the backside. However, yes, an AMF is really great. Also, they have German machines that when you're sewing the canvas to the front, they have a substitute. Instead of doing that by hand, you can do that through a machine. And typically that feels and looks really similar. So I think there was a study in the Mail Gazette, and they actually had a garment with that they applied the full canvas by hand, and then one of these German machines, and the lapel roll and just the great structure on the front, they couldn't tell a difference. So there are certain technologies that you can use to really look and mimic like a handmade garment. Then we have one that's more specific to AJ. So if we do lapel buttonholes by hand or machine, we offer both. It really depends on what you request. So one type of buttonhole that makers, especially Italian makers, but Asian makers, American makers, they can do, which is pretty much always done by hand, is a Milanese buttonhole. So that's a raised buttonhole. It's really, I actually haven't seen that done by machine. It could be done, maybe it is done by machine. I just personally haven't seen it. But if you ever see a raised buttonhole with the GIMP underneath that, that's definitely done by hand. Maybe there's a machine, I just personally haven't seen it. But we offer both handmade or machine-made buttonholes on the lapel. And same for our front buttonholes. We offer them either by hand or by machine. Again, that's a preference for you. Some customers like just the clean look that a machine buttonhole gives. Other customers do like the irregularity, because that is a way to set a machine, a handmade garment versus a machine, just that irregularity stitch even on a buttonhole. And if you did want a hand buttonhole by us, we also could do a double-sided. So the front of the jacket will be done by hand, and then we'll finish the back buttonhole of the jacket by hand. Okay, so next question, we have just sewing hours that could go into a half canvas or a full canvas. I'm going to just speak with, at AJ currently, we're only doing either completely deconstructed or full canvas garments out of our shop. But, you know, for us, a full canvas, it can be, depending on the handwork, 20 plus or 30 plus hours by the time it comes through. A half canvas, you're still getting, there's still handwork that goes into a half canvas garment. So I would say, you know, at least 15 hours. If you're getting more of a handmade garment with a half canvas, you're at least getting about 15 hours worth of handwork if it does have those other hand features on it, just because it does take a lot longer to set the canvas into it versus more of just a fusible on there. So whether it's half canvas or full canvas, it does take a longer construction hours, and it's more handwork in general, even if you do have the machine that's doing it versus a fusible garment. Okay, another question here. Okay, so this is, I guess, more exclusive to AJ, but we have a question about when we're going to receive new linings. I met with one of our lining vendors this week, and we just ordered some additional linings. So I think he's shipping out some books to me today. So I would say in the next 2 weeks, we can distribute some new linings. And then buttons, we're currently taking some button inventory. So we're picking buttons. I know we've had some great suggestions from our clients, but if you guys have any other suggestions, feel free to email our service team, which is service@adrianjewels.com, and we'd love your input on, you know, what type of buttons or linings for us to select for our next collection. And if you did want to use flash linings with Gladson and you don't have their collection, feel free to email service@adrianjewels.com. And we can put you in touch with the Gladson rep, and you could, of course, always order those linings through us. Okay, great. Carozo. I think I have Carozo button on right now. So I'm a huge fan of Carozo buttons. All right, guys, we're going to just we'll see if there's one more question over here. But I do hope that this was informational. We're going to start this series up again. So we have, I know on the docket, women's tailoring, so measuring and fitting women. That'll be coming up. Selling, so we're going to have a roundtable discussion for just selling more of these handmade garments, different ways our stores and other stores are selling these garments. Because another thing that I will share with the team here is I was on a panel back in the fall with some larger brands, and so larger brands, and not just handmade luxury clothing, like Walmart was on there, Tommy Hilfiger, just big brands, and all of them are pushing for more nearshore production. So with nearshore production, if we have these large brands pushing for that, anything made in America for the general public, we're going to see a bigger demand for. So I just want to get that out to you guys too, that pushing made in America, if the larger brands are doing that, we're just going to see a bigger demand. Then last couple questions. In the know, we're going to have them at least once a month, hopefully every 2 weeks, but at least once a month we'll have either an in the know or kind of our fitting 101s. Then we actually do have separate women's models and sketchbook. So that is going to be, if you log into the portal under the resources tab, you can have a women's style guide. So women's tech manual and style guide. Great. And then if anyone wants to email me directly with questions or ideas for upcoming segments, my email is alex@adrianjules.com. I'm going to put that over here. Going to put that in there. And then our main email, so for any questions on signing up with us, ETAs, linings, buttons, service@adrianjules.com. Thank you guys so much. I'm very excited to be kickstarting this series again and just staying in touch with everyone. So I hope everyone has a lovely rest of the Thursday. And yep, we're going to upload this to our portal. So the question here will be available for rewatching. It'll be uploaded to our portal. We're going to also have just a PDF that you can download with high level, fused, half canvas, full canvas, machine versus hand. And then this will be available on our YouTube channel. So we'll send an email blast on our YouTube channel as well for rewatching. Thank you again, guys. Have a great rest of the week.